I never imagined a millionaire would be silenced by a simple cleaner's heartwarming gesture. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with tension. My heart raced as I watched the towering figure in the tailored suit, eyes sharp as daggers, blaze with fury. The room was hushed, almost frozen in disbelief. My palms felt sweaty, trembling as they clutched the edge of the table. I never knew one moment could change everything. Just moments before, I had seen him, Thomas Blake, the man whose wealth poured into every corner of our small town. A modern-day king, I thought. His presence radiated power, but today, with his jaw clenched tight, he was a raging storm. I glanced at Ruby, the cleaner, who was sweeping with gentle determination, completely unaware of the earthquake brewing around her. It was her kindness that had sparked the chain of events. "I told you to leave that," his voice thundered, shaking the very air we breathed. I felt the weight of everyone's gaze, as they flinched, whispering amongst themselves. There was fear, there was wonder. How could a mere cleaner stand against this titan? Was it too late for them all? Background whispers grew, weaving through the room like vines. Ruby was a single mother, everyone knew her struggle. She kept to herself, a quiet hero of the mundane. But today, something shifted. I could see the resolve in her eyes. She wasn't backing down. She lifted her chin, her hands resting on the broom like a sword. Silence gripped the room tightly. I could almost hear my heartbeat, thumping wildly at the unknown. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice steady, cutting calmly through the tension. My breath caught. How could she face him like that? Thomas's lips curled into a sneer. "You think your little act of kindness will save you?" His words dripped with condescension, sharp and bitter. Gasps echoed across the room, but Ruby just held her ground. It was then I saw a flicker of something in Thomas's eyes. Was it fear? Confusion? As if his golden empire, built on wealth and towering walls, was threatened by this woman who didn't back down. Had he met his match? The air pulsed with that possibility, sending shivers down my spine. And then, just as quickly, the energy shifted again. The sudden shrill of a phone pierced through the thick atmosphere. Everyone jumped, including Thomas. He fumbled for his pocket, and for a second, the world held its breath. All eyes were locked on him. "I need to take this," he snapped, storming out of the room, leaving a wake of tension behind. What happened next was a whirlwind. Ruby stood there, eyes wide, confusion flickering like a candle in the wind. I felt drawn to her, wanting to comfort her, but where would that lead? People began murmuring again, speculating, poring over the incident like vultures. Heaven knows I was just as curious. Who was going to break the silence next? Overwhelmed, I glanced at Ruby. She looked lost, and in that moment, I knew this was only the beginning. Secrets lay hidden, waiting to unravel. A millionaire silenced by a cleaner? There had to be more to this story. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The cafe felt like a pressure cooker, every table filled with unspoken thoughts and furtive glances. Ruby, while physically still, carried a tempest inside her, each heartbeat quickening the storm. I couldn't stop staring at her, marveling at the surreal courage she displayed moments ago. It was as if some ancient spirit had surged through her, empowering her to confront a Goliath with little more than a broomstick. I gathered my nerves and approached her. "Ruby," I said softly. The vulnerability in her gaze made me ache to shield her from whatever storm lay ahead. That was incredible. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, her eyes still far away, flickering between disbelief and conscious resolve. "I didn't mean to," she trailed off, her voice barely a whisper. I can't let fear oppress me anymore. I wanted to tell her how brave she was, but her spirit felt fragile, untested. Yet here was a woman who had fought for her place in this world, who had weathered countless storms. You stood up to him, I admired, hoping she could see the strength within her. Not many would have the guts. Her fingers brushed against the broom handle, and for the first time, it seemed less like a tool and more like an emblem of her resilience. It was just a moment, she said, her shoulders slumping a little. I can't shake the feeling that he'll retaliate. Before I could respond, an elderly woman sitting at a corner booth, a regular no one had noticed before, called out to her. Excuse me, dear, she said, her voice trembling with warmth and sincerity. Thank you for standing up for yourself. It touched my heart. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. We all need to stand tall. The encouragement seemed to lift the weight on Ruby's shoulders, if only slightly. A group of patrons nearby nodded in agreement, some even offering small words of solidarity. It was a ripple of kindness, each gesture stitching a moment of hope in the fabric of fear that hung heavy in the room. Yet as Ruby began to smile just a little, my heart sank. I couldn't shake the ominous feeling that there was more to come. How could someone like Thomas simply walk away? A man like him, with everything to lose, would not let this slide. The whispers of escape, of consequences, clouded over our moment. Ruby, I said, my voice a whisper, charged with urgency. What happens when he comes back? She turned to me, something flickering in her determination. For once, I'm willing to face the repercussions. I can't keep running from the truth. Her resolve haunted me, for they were but words floating on a sea of uncertainty. A fierce spirit wrapped in fragile skin. Little did we know, the next wave was already forming behind us. Just as the noise of the cafe began to fade away, the door swung open, cutting through the moment like a knife. Thomas re-entered. The atmosphere snapped back to tension, everyone suddenly silent, as if a dam had broken. Ruby, he called, his tone deceptively smooth, but I could sense that wild storm lurking beneath. I think it's time we had a little chat, don't you? Panic coursed through me, and I turned to Ruby, her face a mask of steely resolve broken only by a flicker of fear. I could feel the world tilt around us, the ground shifting beneath our feet. The sharp intake of breath echoed throughout the room, and then the unexpected happened. Dread lurked, but something else hung in the air, a glint of defiance buried deep within her eyes. Sure, let us talk, she spoke, voice clear, unyielding. And with that one sentence hung a weight of inevitability thicker than fog, as though the very air thickened, pregnant with the emotional storm gathering. For what awaited them, I could only guess. An avalanche of secrets and truths buried far deeper than I had imagined lay ahead, ready to sweep us all away. I felt the tightening in my chest, the chilling realization that we were only at the brink of something explosive, and there was no way of knowing what would emerge from the chaos. I could feel every heartbeat echoing in my ears, the cafe now filled with an unease that had taken on a life of its own. Thomas's presence loomed large, a dark cloud threatening to cast shadows over the small glimmers of hope that had dared to flicker in Ruby's spirit. As he sauntered toward us, a wicked smirk curling at the edges of his lips, I could see the patrons around us retreating into their tables, as if preparing for an impending storm. Thomas, Ruby said, her voice steadier than I would have imagined, but the tremor beneath her surface sent shivers down my spine. What do you want? Straight to the point, he replied with a feigned charm, but I recognized the threat buried deep within his words. I came to discuss matters you seem to be misconstruing. Perhaps over a more private setting? He gestured toward the door, his eyes glinting with a malice that was impossible to miss. Ruby, don't, I warned softly, stepping closer, hoping to act as a barrier between her and this man who reeked of intimidation. It's fine, she said, her eyes locked onto his, a fierce determination etched on her face. I won't back down. Not this time. The tension in the air was suffocating, and I could hear the quiet whispers of the other patrons. Some whispered their support, while others expressed doubts, wondering if this was a battle she could win against a man like him. I felt the crushing weight of their scrutiny and the desperate urge to protect her from the storm approaching. Before I could voice my concerns, Ruby broke the standoff. Let us go somewhere else, if you're so keen on talking. But understand this, there's nothing you can say that can intimidate me anymore. Each word rang with a strength I hadn't known she possessed, and yet, beneath her bravado, I caught a glimpse of fear, a flicker of vulnerability that threatened to expose the cracks in her armor. Good choice, Ruby, Thomas replied, the smirk returning with a vengeance, and with that, he turned, striding toward the door. Ruby glanced back at me, her expression a mixture of resolve and trepidation. The cafe felt like a cage as I watched her follow him outside. I felt the instinct to chase after her, to drag her back into the safety of those walls, but I knew that wouldn't help. This was her battle now, one she needed to face on her own terms. I remained rooted in place, helplessly watching the door swing closed behind them. The murmurs grew louder, the conversations crackling with both curiosity and concern. Is she really going to confront him? One woman whispered, and another, an older gentleman, grimaced, she's braver than most. But bravery can be a double-edged sword, and the unease gnawing at my insides deepened as I realized just how precarious her position was. As minutes ticked by, I could feel our little world retreating into an anxious silence, and all I could do was wait. In that agonizing stillness, I caught sight of the elderly woman from before, her gaze fixed upon the door that Ruby had exited through. There was something in her expression and understanding, perhaps, born of her own life experiences. Slowly, she made her way to me, resting a hand on my shoulder, her grip gentle yet firm. You have to believe in her, she said quietly. We all do. She's not alone in this. Her words seeped into my heart, a balm to my turbulent emotions. But what if I began, the fear choking me, but she held my gaze steady. Fear is a powerful adversary, but hope can sometimes yield unexpected strength. You just have to have faith, she replied, and as if in response to her words, the door swung open once more. My heart plummeted. Two figures emerged, Ruby on one side, visibly shaken but standing strong, while Thomas followed, his expression unreadable. Everything felt suspended in that moment, except for the whispers that began anew, spilling into the space like wildfire. Suddenly, Thomas raised his hand, signaling for silence. The cafe held its breath, the air tense and electric. Let me make this clear, he announced, his voice booming through the crowd. This was just a warning. His eyes zeroed in on Ruby, an unsettling intensity radiating from him. You may think you've won a battle, but mark my word, I won't let this go easily. You have no idea whom you are dealing with. The weight of his threat hung palpably in the air as he turned and strode back out into the street, leaving behind him an air of foreboding. But I turned to Ruby, bracing myself for the reaction I expected: fear, perhaps even defeat, but instead, I found her staring at the door through which he had exited, a flicker of defiance igniting her features. Ruby, are you all right? I stepped closer, desperate to close the distance, and to reassure her that she wasn't alone. I am, she said, voice barely above a whisper, with a firmness that startled me. But I'll need more than just courage now. I have to prepare for what comes next. As the reality of her words seeped in, I felt a sense of foreboding creep deeper into my heart. What lay ahead for Ruby was uncharted territory, fraught with danger, but she was ready to tread that path alone if need be. But just as I comforted myself with her newfound resolve, the cafe was invaded by a different kind of storm. The door swung open again, this time revealing a figure I had never expected: an old ally of Thomas, someone I had seen only in passing. And in their hands, a file as thick as the sins buried between Ruby and Thomas crashed onto the counter, a fistful of secrets that could unravel everything she had fought for. I felt my breath hitch, the realization dawning upon us all this was only the beginning of an upheaval that would ensnare us all, pulling us deeper into the chaos already set in motion. The atmosphere was thick with a combination of shock and disbelief as the file hit the counter with an ominous thud. A hush fell over the cafe, even the whispers evaporated, replaced by the palpable tension that wrapped around us like an unwelcome embrace. The ink of hidden truths seemed to seep into the very fabric of the air we breathed, each second stretching into eternity, as we processed what lay before us. The new figure stepped forward, a slight smirk playing on their lips as they fixed their gaze on Ruby and me. You thought you could escape? They looked at Ruby as if sizing her up, gauging just how naive or strong she really was. Let me introduce myself. I'm Lucas, and I happen to know more about Thomas than even he knows about himself. The name rattled through me, a cold reminder of the tangled web that had entangled Ruby. I had sensed darkness surrounding Thomas, but there were depths I had never fathomed, and I feared what this intruder held might plunge us into a sinister abyss. Why are you here? Ruby spoke, her voice steady, though her eyes flickered with uncertainty as they met mine. In her stance, I sensed both fury and vulnerability merged together, creating an energy that was nearly overwhelming. Because you need to understand something crucial, Ruby, Lucas continued, leaning slightly on the counter, relishing the suspense. Every moment you choose to fight against Thomas, you risk everything. He plays a game far beyond what you can fathom, and you, my dear, are but a pawn in his master plan. I wanted to interject, to tell him that it was wrong to belittle her struggle, but Ruby was unyielding. She stood firm, refusing to let the seeds of doubt germinate. I'm not afraid of him. I've come too far to be intimidated now. His laughter echoed throughout the cafe, hollow and taunting. Fighting him means bringing your darkest fears to light. You truly think you can stand against someone with his resources and connections? Do you understand what he is capable of? You will lose everything if you persist. Anger surged through me, igniting a fire of protectiveness. You think scaring her will make her back down? She is stronger than you know. I wanted to pull Ruby close, shield her from the looming threat, but I could see something in her expression that granted me pause, a flicker of clarity amid the precariousness. Listen to him, Ruby urged, her voice barely louder than a whisper, but the intensity was evident. What does he want? Why now? Lucas stepped closer, the tension thickening as I realized we were standing on the precipice of a realization that could shatter everything. You deserve to know, Ruby. Thomas has a reputation for silencing those who defy him. And that includes your family's past. A pang of confusion rippled through Ruby's features. My family? What do you know about them? More than you might wish to hear, he replied, his smile morphing into something sinister. They have secrets, dark ones, and Thomas won't stop until he unearths them. Your courage may very well lead him straight to the very heart of your lineage, where horrors await. A sudden chill crept up my spine. Ruby turned to me, her expression torn between betrayal and determination. You knew about my past? I swear, Ruby, I had no idea until now. I thought I faltered, not wanting to lay bare my own ignorance at such a critical moment. The fear in her eyes mirrored the turmoil in my chest, and I knew we were teetering on the edge of a precipice that could plunge us into darkness. She took a deep breath, shaking off the dread that clung to her. Lucas, if you know anything, now is the time to share it. I refused to let Thomas scare me away from my own life. He eyed her anew, seeming to weigh her resolve before finally speaking. Very well. But understand, the path you choose now could lead to your ruin. Thomas's legacy is built upon the ruins of countless others. The information in that file may illuminate truths you'd rather remain obscured. With that, he flicked open the file, revealing pages that felt like a gateway to the very essence of Ruby's past betrayals, alliances, and lives crisscrossing in a tangled mess of deceit and wronged intentions. Gasps echoed around the cafe, and patrons strained closer to glimpse the unfolding drama, as if our shared suffering connected us in this moment. I just wanted to hide Ruby away from it all, to shield her from the harsh and savage reality creeping into our lives. Ruby, you don't have to go down this road. I grabbed her arm, desperate to pull her back from the edge. We can find another way. Together. But as I looked into her eyes, there was a spark of fierce determination radiating from her. I realized there was no shaking her resolve. I have to know, not just for me, but for everyone who could be affected by this. I won't be a victim any longer. A moment hung in the air, both exhilarating and terrifying, and then she turned back to Lucas. Show me everything. Before he could respond, the cafe doors burst open one more time, a whirlwind of chaos spilling through as a new figure appeared, someone from Thomas's inner circle. The tension shot through the room like a bolt of lightning, and my heart raced as the weight of imminent danger settled in my bones. They grinned, eyes gleaming with reckless confidence, and my breath caught in my throat as I recognized the unmistakable emblem on their jacket, a mark of allegiance to Thomas himself. "Running to the enemy's secrets, are we?" they announced, laughter laced with malice. "You've both picked quite the dangerous fight. And it's about to get much, much worse." As doubt and anxiety clawed at my heart, I couldn't shake the realization that this was a conflict spiraling beyond our control, where bravery could lead to needless sacrifice. Each piece of the puzzle slid into place with heartbreaking clarity, pulling us inexorably toward a confrontation none of us were truly prepared for. Yet there was Ruby, resolute against the tide, and as our eyes locked, we both knew one undeniable truth: this journey, fraught with peril, was only just beginning. As the laughter of Thomas's minion echoed off the cafe walls, the air felt suffocating. It was as if time itself was bending under the weight of our fear, each second a reminder of how perilous our path had become. Ruby's grip tightened on the edge of the counter, her knuckles white against the wooden surface. For a fleeting moment, I feared she might shatter like glass, but then something unexpected unfolded. "Have you ever stopped to consider how many lives your boss has ruined?" Ruby's voice rang out, stronger than before, a defiant bell tolling against the dark. "If standing up to him means facing danger, then so be it." I refused to cower in his shadow. The challenger paused, a flicker of surprise momentarily disrupting their smug demeanor. "You really think you can take him on? You're swimming in waters deeper than you understand, little girl." The hint of a threat lingered in their voice as they stepped closer, closing the gap, their breath sharp with loathing. "Enough!" I interjected, my heart thudding against my ribs as I caught her wrist. "Ruby, we can think this through. We can find support." "Support?" They scoffed, a venomous chuckle escaping. "Do you think there's anyone willing to stand against Thomas? Anyone who won't pay with blood or worse?" But just as despair threatened to wrap itself around us, a quiet figure from the back of the cafe stepped forward. An older woman adorned in work clothes, the cafe's cleaner who had been sweeping unnoticed, raised her hand, her demeanor composed amidst the chaos. "I will stand with her," she declared. "I may not have riches, but I have seen what that man can do. I've watched him destroy lives while people turn a blind eye. Perhaps you don't know that there are more of us ready to fight back." Her words hung in the air, a simple statement imbued with a profound weight. Whispers fluttered among the patrons, conferring a glimmer of hope, a flicker of collective courage igniting behind Ruby. It was a reminder that the battle against darkness need not be fought alone. Sometimes, solidarity resided in the most unexpected places. As the tension cracked and shifted, I felt something inside me begin to stir. Maybe we could gather a coalition, those who had suffered under Thomas's tyranny, who would be willing to rise against him. Hope mingled with fear, creating a fire that was both exhilarating and terrifying. But then Lucas interjected, the smirk on his face morphing into something more serious. "You have no idea what you're drawing into play, do you? You all think you're fighting for righteousness, but this world is not black and white. It's a battlefield of grays, where every choice has consequences." Ruby faced him, her expression unwavering. "Then be it so. What is life without a fight? What is freedom without sacrifice?" Just then, the other figure, Thomas's minion, scoffed, catching my eye as they gauged the response of the crowd, searching for weakness. "This should be fun. Do you really think your little uprising will make a difference? I'd watch your backs if I were you." Before I could respond, the cafe door blasted open, and another familiar face stepped through. Milo, my old college roommate, one I hadn't seen in years. His expression shifted from confusion to concern as he took in the scene. "It's not safe here," he called, rushing over with a protective air. "We need to go. This place is a powder keg, and someone's going to strike a match." "I'm not hiding," Ruby said, her voice a clarion amid the noise. "Milo, you don't understand. We're fighting this together," I added, desperate to bridge our past with the present. But as he took in the tension, something flickered in his eyes, a moment of recognition, perhaps an understanding of the lengths we would go to for justice. "Then let me help. I might not know everything happening here, But that doesn't mean I want to lend my hand. A surge of solidarity enveloped the cafe, but just as we grasped at the notion of unity, a shattering revelation fell like a stone into our midst. Lucas, now looking grave, leaned towards us, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying the weight of an avalanche. You think you're ready to fight, Thomas? You're about to learn just how deeply entangled you really are. You see, it's not just Ruby's family he's after. It's all of you. Your lives, your pasts, they're pieces on a board you've never even begun to understand. The cafe fell silent, the weight of his words crashing down like a wave. I felt the blood drain from my face as the implications wrapped around me, squeezing tighter. The struggle Ruby faced had opened a Pandora's box we now could not close. Then, Milo shifted our gaze to the door directly into the storm on the horizon. We need to move. Now. I saw someone in the parking lot, someone who has been missing for weeks. With that, the cafe erupted into chaos as patrons surged towards the back, urgency flooding the air like a lifeline. Ruby and I exchanged one last look before the tide swept us away, our fates intertwined even more tightly than before. With hope and shadows entwined around us, we braced ourselves for the revelation lurking just ahead. Little did we know, the unfolding truth would not just challenge our identities but threaten to unravel the very fabric of our lives altogether. The alley behind the cafe merged into a labyrinth of shadows, where the fading light struggled to penetrate the tight corridors. Ruby, Milo, and I moved as one, our shoulders brushing against the flaking bricks, a makeshift unit bound by urgency and rising determination. The remote sounds of chaos faded, but the weight of our shared revelations pressed down harder with every step. What did Lucas mean? Ruby broke the silence, her breath coming in quick bursts. How are our lives pieces on some chessboard? I don't know, I replied, glancing back towards where the murmurs from the cafe were giving way to the sound of footsteps. But it feels dangerous. You don't need to say it, Milo cut in, glancing over his shoulder. Whatever game Thomas is playing, we're in it whether we like it or not. He stopped suddenly, causing me to bump into him. There, ahead, huddled beneath a flickering street lamp, was a figure, a silhouette outlined against the dim glow. My heart raced. Could it be? As we approached cautiously, the figure stepped forward into the light, revealing dark circles under fierce eyes. It was Sophia, a classmate of ours from back in college who had vanished weeks ago amidst Thomas's growing tyranny. Her hair was a tangled mess, her clothes dirty, but the fire in her gaze was unmistakable. Help me, she gasped, her voice tremulous yet commanding. I've learned things I wasn't supposed to know. What happened to you? Milo rushed forward, grabbing her shoulders. Where have you been? I was taken, she said, forcing out the words as though sharing a secret too heavy to lift. I overheard his plans. He wants to make a new deal, something that ties all of us to him forever. I barely escaped. Ruby surged forward, eyes wide. A deal for what? What are you saying? But Sophia shook her head, her expression shifting into one of deep despair. You don't understand. He's not just interested in us. It's the company, the foundation, the power it holds. And you, Ruby, she turned to her, her voice shaking now. Your family is at the center of it. He wants to erase anyone who gets in his way, and that includes you and everyone you care about. A sudden chill swept through me. The battle Ruby thought she was fighting had turned into something much deeper, more treacherous. My mind raced back to our earlier conversations. The chains of fear wrapped around our lives were only tightening. So what do we do? Ruby's whisper was barely audible, struggle etched across her face. Do we run? Do we hide? Before Sophia could answer, Milo turned abruptly, scanning our surroundings. We need to get somewhere safe first. Then we can figure out how to fight back. Sophia's mouth twisted, her panic morphing into resignation. You don't know how vast his reach is. Every move you make is calculated. He anticipates rebellion. He'll be ready for you, she dropped her gaze. But I can help. The hope that was flickering within me took a hit. Help how? I have friends, Sophia continued, determination rising in her voice. People who've been lurking in the shadows for far too long, watching, waiting. If you're willing to take the risk, I believe we can assemble something that could challenge Thomas. A newfound fire ignited in Ruby's eyes, yet uncertainty clawed at my heart. Could we trust her? Milo, I turned to him, heart racing as I pondered our next steps. What do you think? I think we're already in the thick of it, he said firmly. And if we have a chance to turn Thomas's game against him, we have to take it. Before we could discuss further, the distant sound of sirens pierced the air, followed by the heavy thud of boots approaching. They're coming! I hissed, pulling Ruby and Milo closer. Panic surged, and we exchanged glances. Decisions spun in silence, but clarity was eclipsed by urgency. We can't stay here, Ruby said, a spark of resolve igniting. We run now, find Sophia's friends, and plan. It's the only way. But no, she paused, her voice unwavering, we're running towards the unknown. There are no guarantees. With that, we surged down the alley, away from the encroaching danger. The air thickened with our shared anxiety, but also with something almost forgotten hope, flickering like a candle against the storm. Just as we turned the corner, a familiar face emerged from the shadows. Lucas. His expression was cryptic, unreadable, but the tension reflected in his eyes halted us in our tracks. What are you doing here? I gasped, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on my chest. I know more than I let on, he said carefully, his voice lower, haunted. And if you want to survive what's coming, we need to talk. There are more players in this game than you realize. The sound of the sirens grew closer, the dread in my stomach coiling tighter. Could we truly navigate this treacherous web? The lifeblood of our struggle depended on understanding not just our enemy, but perhaps our allies too. As my pulse quickened, I sensed that every revelation would only deepen the peril we faced. Little did we know, in the very moments of seeking to grasp control, the true depths of betrayal and sacrifice awaited ahead. As we stood there, caught between the threat of discovery and the complexities of betrayal, a chill swept through the alley. Lucas's presence felt both like a wound and a salve, pulling us deeper into the chaos but offering a faint whisper of hope. There was something in his eyes that suggested urgency, the kind born from desperation. You need to trust me, Lucas pressed, glancing nervously around as if the shadows themselves could betray us. But not all is as it seems. Thomas isn't simply an adversary, he is a master manipulator. He has built an empire on fear and madness, and that empire has more cracks than anyone realizes. There are those who want to bring him down from within. The key is knowing who they are. But before I could process his words, the unmistakable cadence of footsteps echoed behind us, growing louder. Panic roared back into my chest. We can't stand here, I urged, grabbing Milo's arm and pulling him into action. Ruby nodded, though her eyes darted between the two men as if forming complex calculations in a game of chess. Where? Milo muttered, his voice reduced to a breath. Where do we go? Follow me, Lucas commanded, darting towards the mouth of the alley. I know a place somewhere safe for now. As we ran, mingled voices permeated our world, the growing chaos of sirens and commands puncturing the night air. Each step felt like a heartbeat in the midst of chaos, every pulse resonating with fear and determination. The route twisted and turned, and I felt the hard, desolate concrete give way to a small park, its darkened corners whispering the secrets of the past. We huddled behind a wooden bench, shields against the shadows. The world outside buzzed with the urgency of pursuit, but here, in the stillness, I could focus on Lucas. I don't know how to really trust you, Lucas, I admitted quietly, my voice breaking. But if you have information, now is the time to share it. He inhaled sharply, his chest rising as he looked between us, a mix of resolve and fear etched onto his features. I do. But it's complicated. Thomas has eyes everywhere, so let us keep this brief. Ruby clenched her fists, tension radiating off her. Complicated how? Just tell us what's going on. There's a coalition forming against him, Lucas continued, urgency lacing his voice. People in power who understand the implications of Thomas's unchecked ambition. But every time they've tried to make a move, it backfires. They have been silenced, bought off, or worse, he trailed off, pinching his lips together, as if sealing off painful memories. We can't just sit here, I urged. If there is a coalition, maybe they can help us. But how do we get to them? There's a contact, Lucas said, lowering his voice even further, knowing full well that any stray sound could draw attention. A cleaner who works at one of the high-rises, someone with ties to the coalition. She has been helping people slip off Thomas's radar. But we need to reach her before he tightens his grip. Is there really hope? I wondered, my heart wrestling with skepticism. And how do we do that without drawing attention? There's a service hatch leading inside, he pointed behind us. If we can slip into that building, we can avoid the eyes of Thomas's men for now. Milo's expression mirrored mine, a mix of hope and disbelief. But how do we trust you, Lucas? You don't. But you don't have a choice either, he replied, urgency underscoring every word. Tonight is pivotal. If you're looking to turn the tides against Thomas, this is your chance, but we must move quickly. Before we could absorb what he was suggesting, the faint shimmer of headlights danced through the park's trees, casting long shadows that seemed to creep across the ground toward us. I felt dread wash over me, goosebumps erupting across my skin. We can't wait any longer, Lucas said, giving us no room for hesitation. Now or never. We scrambled to our feet, and with a final, unspoken agreement, we followed Lucas toward the narrow service hatch nestled behind the park's maintenance shed. The thundering sound of sirens began to fade as we ducked into the cool darkness of the hatch, my breath catching with each step deeper into the unknown. Inside was a cramped space, the air stale and heavy with silence. My heart raced, each thud echoing against the metal walls as Lucas pulled a flashlight from his pack. This way, he instructed, pointing down a long, dimly lit corridor that disappeared into the promise of secrecy. Caution wrapped around my thoughts, though I couldn't shake the flickers of hope igniting through my worry. In this moment, it felt like a small spark, but a spark nonetheless. Yet deep down, a relentless thought clawed at me. What if this hope was merely another facet of Thomas's game? Would reaching out to this cleaner place our lives in more danger than ever before? Keep your heads down and stay close, Lucas whispered, vaulting forward. With each step, the darkness enveloped us, tightening around us like the chains we sought to break. And then it hit me, the unforeseen weight of trusting the very person who had once played a part in our torment. The irony of a past villain now seemingly scrambling for redemption twisted like a knife in my gut. Could Lucas truly lead us to safety, or was he merely another pawn in a larger game crafted by hands unseen? Just as I was about to voice my thoughts, an echoing noise resonated around the corner like a growl of thunder that promised ill fate. Run! Lucas hissed out. We dashed forward, lungs burning and hearts pounding, propelled by the instinct to survive. Where we might end up was as uncertain as everything swirling within us, but one thing remained crystal clear. We were losing precious time, and with every second ticking away, the threads connecting us to Thomas tightened ever more. We burst into a smaller corridor, breaths synchronized in frantic rhythm. When clarity cut through the chaos, a sudden realization surged through me, seizing my thoughts with a shattering grip. Lucas, I panted, glancing back. Do you know why Thomas is after Ruby? What does he want with her family? His face tightened in the flashlight glow, revealing an expression I couldn't quite decode. Fear, conviction, dread? And just before he opened his mouth to respond, the flickering light dimmed, leaving us engulfed in an all-consuming darkness. That moment stretched painfully, caught in the void, and I understood. Whatever answers lay ahead might come at a steep price, one we might not be ready to pay. As the darkness enveloped us, silence became our only companion, wrapping its cold fingers around my throat. The sound of my heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out the reasoned thoughts I desperately tried to grasp. I could feel the warmth of Milo's shoulder pressed against my side, a faint reminder that I wasn't alone, but the fear hung heavily in the air, thicker than the dust settled between the walls of this stark corridor. Lucas? I whispered, desperate for his reassurance. The moments stretched infinitely as I waited for an answer that felt as if it would forever remain beyond reach. His voice broke through the stillness like a fragile ember in the night. I don't know the whole story, he said slowly, the weight of his uncertainty hanging in the air. But I do know Thomas has been planning something big, something that could change everything. Ruby's family, they might have been part of what he wants to control. What does that mean? Ruby's voice trembled, sharp with urgency. It means they know something, or they have something, that he doesn't want exposed, Lucas replied, the words clipped as they spilled forth. But I don't know what it is. Not yet. A shiver ran down my spine, intertwining with the fear curling tightly within me. So what's our next move? Milo's voice cut in, punctuated by his breathless desperation. We can't just wander around in the dark, waiting for him to find us. Lucas took a moment, drawing in a shaky breath. If we can make it to the main stairwell, we can reach the roof. And then before he finished, a loud crash echoed from behind us, the sound splintering the hush into shards of raw panic. The footsteps that had once echoed from afar were now bolder, sharper, gaining ground with alarming speed. Run! Lucas shouted again, and we bolted into the heart of the darkness, a barely there glow from the flashlight in his trembling grip guiding our flight. Every stride felt weighted, as if unseen hands were pulling at us, threatening to drag us back into the chilling embrace of our pursuer. Do you hear that? Ruby gasped, her voice laced with fear. I strained my ears amidst the sound of our hurried breaths and pounding hearts, catching distinct voices murmuring in the shadows. There were more of them. Stay quiet, Lucas warned, his breath mingling with ours, a reminder of our vulnerability in this claustrophobic space. We pressed against the walls, the sudden fear of discovery suffocating. Shadows moved in and out of the flickering light, distorted figures glancing around as we remained frozen, ears straining to decipher their intentions. Find them, you understand? We've got a job to finish, one voice growled. The menace in his tone slithered into the air, wrapping around my throat. Get to the cleaners. They'll know where they've gone. I looked at Lucas, whose usual confidence seemed to flicker. I could sense the weight of his past decisions, the choices that put us on this precarious path, and the uncertainty of our future. In that thin sliver of darkness and desperation, something shifted inside me. How far had we come, and at what cost? Were we willing to sacrifice everything to unravel the deceit that bound us all? Let us go, Lucas finally hissed, snapping me back to the present. With renewed urgency fueling our steps, we pushed forward, moving deeper into the unknown. As we approached what looked like a stairwell, I felt a surge of adrenaline. Maybe there was a way out, maybe we could escape the tightening grasp of Thomas's world, if only we reached those heights. But then a sudden screech echoed through the hall like a banshee's wail, halting us in our tracks. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just the sound of our pursuers. This one was deeper, darker, a sinister resonance that shook the very foundation of my spirit. What was that? Milo asked, voice trembling with fear. Lucas's expression darkened, his flashlight beam wavering. Stay close, he ordered, uncertainty tugging at his tone. We can't let them see us. Panic clawed at my insides as I remembered the warning circulating about Thomas's plans. The very weapons he wielded weren't just misdirected anger, no, there was a depth to his cruelty that cut deeper than I had imagined. As Lucas led us up the stairwell, breaths quickening with every step, I felt the icy tendrils of dread wrap around my heart, and then, out of the silence came a sudden rattle, as if metal was not just echoing, but alive. With one final push, we emerged onto the roof, the cold night air swallowing us whole. For the briefest moment, the city sprawled out before us like a glittering tapestry of light, a stark contrast to the shadows looming just behind us. Where do we go from here? Milo whispered, eyes scanning the darkness surrounding us. But before Lucas could respond, a blinding light cut through the night sky. A search helicopter hovered overhead, roaring like a beast unleashed. The spotlight landed on us like a malevolent eye, pinning us against the rooftop's edge, illuminating our vulnerability. I felt my heart plunge as reality crystallized in the light's sharp assault. We had been found. Time's up, Lucas muttered, his voice grave as the enormity of our situation surged back to the forefront of my mind. We had only raced from one danger into another, and it struck me no, it hit me like 1,000 bricks the futility of our struggle. The very hope I had clung to now seemed like wisps of smoke disintegrating against the harsh, flickering glow. And just as despair sank its claws deep, a voice called out from beneath the spotlight's glaring blaze. "There you are! Surrender, and no one will get hurt." I shuddered at the command echoing back. Surrender, the very notion sent chills through my bones. But there was also a dawning clarity, a question buried in my thoughts, fierce and burning. If we were to be caught, would we survive this night? Or had we unknowingly walked into the final trap laid by fate? As the night grew darker, the chains of despair tightened around us, yet the sudden impulse of fighting surged forth. In that instant, a flicker of resistance ignited, and unbidden, I refused to let fear decide my fate. Even in the heart of a storm, I would choose to fight rather than fold. But as I glanced to Lucas, anxiety churned within me. What awaited us on that rooftop? And with every choice we had made, was this truly just the beginning of an even more desperate game? The wind howled across the rooftop, its icy fingers tugging at our clothes and whispering fear into our bones. At that moment, the spotlight from the helicopter seemed to grow hotter, a tangible weight that pressed against my chest and constricted my breath. I had always imagined being part of something greater, a hero in a story where I would emerge unscathed. Yet here I was, standing on the precipice of despair, feeling utterly insignificant against the unraveling of our lives. Above the chaos, I caught sight of Lucas, his eyes fiercely determined yet clouded with shadows of doubt. Milo's breathing quickened, each gasp a reminder of the fragility of our situation. Ruby, staring wide-eyed at the looming threat, was the embodiment of vulnerability, a stark contrast to the resolute scrambling of my heart. Just as our collective resolve began to buckle beneath the weight of our peril, the unexpected flicker of kindness broke through the freezing atmosphere. "Wait!" A voice rang out below, starkly different from the metallic snarls of our pursuers. A figure emerged from the chaos of the shadows, a cleaner I recognized from before, Maria, the unassuming woman whose warmth had often been a comfort during my dreariest days at the hotel. Her familiar, gentle spirit wove through the thick tension of our surroundings. "There's another way. Come with me." "Maria!" I shouted, the name escaping my lips like a lasso thrown into the churning darkness. The connection between us, fragile but unmistakable, suddenly felt like a lifeline. "Quickly!" She beckoned, her arms sweeping towards an access door partially hidden behind a stack of crates. The light from the helicopter buzzed angrily overhead, yet something in her stance projected calmness amid the chaos. "Through here, I can help you. It's safer in the maintenance tunnels." "Is it a trap?" Lucas's voice trembled, laced with protective instinct. "No. Trust me," she pleaded, her eyes reflecting a fierce determination. "I know the risks, and I've seen what Thomas is capable of. But if you stay out here, you're buying yourselves time for only pain and uncertainty." In that heartbeat of decision, I weighed the courage of hope against the keen edge of apprehension. Could we trust this sudden ally? Her seemingly simple gesture, the courage to stand against the storm of chaos, sparked embers of something I hadn't felt in a long time, a flicker of hope. "Let us go!" I shouted, solidifying my resolve. The thought of being captured by Thomas and the mystery that surrounded him was far scarier than trusting a singular act of kindness from someone who, until now, existed only in the periphery of my life. Milo nodded, and for an instant, the shadow of despair receded, replaced by a collective willingness to push forward. Lucas exchanged glances with Ruby, and with a brief nod we descended from the ledge of the roof into the unknown. As we slipped through the door into the shadowy maintenance tunnel, the cacophony of the helicopter faded into a haunting hum. Yet, even as the chaos morphed into worry, Maria remained steady, guiding us through the maze of musty passages. Her unwavering presence shielded us like a warm coat against the encroaching chill. "Are you sure we're safe?" Ruby whispered, her voice echoing off the damp walls. "I know these tunnels well," Maria replied, her tone soothing despite the urgency guiding our pace. "Thomas underestimated my role here. He never thought to question his own resources, but I'm much more than a cleaner." Discomfort churned within me, a curiosity about Maria's past life bumping against the emerging question of her true intentions. "Why help us?" I dared to ask. She paused, glancing back at us with eyes that shone with fierce recollection. "Because I've seen what happens when people remain silent. I lost someone to his control, and I won't let it happen again." Silence enveloped us, heavy with realization. Maria was no mere cleaner. She carried the weight of loss on her shoulders, as we all did. It was this shared burden that spurred her into our path, intertwining our lives in this moment of desperation. As we navigated through the labyrinth, each twist and turn steeped deeper into the fear that someone might see us, the thrill of survival tangled with the truth that we might crumble at any moment. Inserting ourselves deeper into her world, the sense of purpose replaced the paralyzing fear that had once dulled my senses. Before long, a flicker of light emerged ahead. "This way," Maria instructed, leading us to a small break room within the maintenance area. She swung the door open, revealing a safety that felt achingly surreal. "Close the door and keep quiet," she cautioned, glancing back at the corridor we had just traversed. We squeezed into the cramped space, the dim light creating a cocoon around us that softened the edges of our anxiety. Hope surged anew in the comfort of this sanctuary, a stark contrast from the tempest outside, but even as we hid beneath the false safety of the room, uncertainty churned within me. Maria's presence gave rise to unspoken questions. Among the fragments of our lives we shared, did she hold more secrets about Thomas that could pierce through our shrouded confusion? Just as I opened my mouth to voice another question, a fierce knocking reverberated against the door. "Looking for the runaways," a voice shouted from beyond the threshold, punctuating the air with an edge of menace. My heart raced, panic clawing anew at my insides. "What do we do?" I breathed, terror swirling in my gut. Maria's expression swiftly transformed into a mask of fierce determination. "We hold fast. The stakes have risen, but we've come so far already. Trust that hope can become our shield." As I looked around at my friends, glimmers of unity flickered in their eyes too. But beneath the thin layer of assurance lay the ever-present fear that every moment spent hiding was a moment closer to an inevitable betrayal. With every knock, I wrestled with the dawning truth. Our fates were inextricably tied to the heart of the struggle we had scarcely begun to understand. And as I steadied myself to accept the volatile path ahead, the realization washed over me, overwhelming yet undeniable. The battle had only just begun. In the heart of that dimly lit break room, fear swirled around us like a tempest, gnawing at every fragment of hope I had clung to. The knocks on the door echoed like drums in a death march, punctuating the very air we breathed. Maria's steadfast presence held us together, her belief in our fight offering a fragile lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. "We have to face this," she said, the firmness in her voice bolstering my resolve. "Every moment we hide only serves his purpose. It's time we take back control." I felt my chest tighten at the prospect of facing Thomas and the nightmare that awaited us beyond the door. But with every passing second, I saw the flicker of determination in Ruby's eyes, the same fierce spirit that had sparked my admiration weeks ago. Beside her, Milo wore a mask of quiet bravery, a testament to our shared commitment, and Lucas, though fraught with uncertainty, stood back, sighing with reluctant acceptance. "We can't let fear win," I echoed, feeling the embers of courage ignite within me. "We've faced so much already. Together." "Together," Ruby affirmed, the tremor in her voice now transformed into a resounding vow. "Whatever happens next, we face it as one." And just like that, the air in the room shifted, charged with a newfound energy that coursed like wildfire in our veins. Our unity, these fragile connections forged through trials, formed an unbreakable bond that I had never fully understood until now. Maria stepped towards the door, the shadows draping her like a cloak. "When I open this door, we'll create a diversion. It'll buy us precious time to escape through the back. Follow me, stay close." As she turned the handle, a surge of adrenaline coursed through me. The moment she swung the door open was a moment suspended in time, the threshold between our hidden fears and the raw reality clawing at our back. "Looking for the runaways?" "Here we are," Maria called out, her voice strong and defiant. Before the figures could react, she hurled a nearby chair, sending it crashing into a cluster of tools across the room, the sound of thunderous clamor that echoed like a war cry. "Go!" she shouted, urgency laced with fierce determination. We raced out the back, moving as one cohesive force through the maze of corridors as the sound of confusion erupted behind us. My heart pounded in rhythm with our unyielding footsteps, the anticipation of freedom mingling with the looming dread of recapture. "Over here!" I gestured, my instincts guiding me towards a shadowy exit door hidden behind industrial crates. We burst outside into the cool night air, exhilaration and panic intertwining within me, each breath a testament to our resolve. But we all knew the storm wasn't just behind us. It swirled around us, contorting our fates in ways we couldn't yet understand. The brilliance of the city lights felt both illuminating and isolating, each one a reminder of what we stood to lose. "Where do we go now?" Milo's voice trembled. The urgency from earlier was morphing into anxious energy, and as I glanced back at the exit, the shadows were shifting. Thomas's men were closing in, their growls seeping into the night. "Head east, towards the park," Maria instructed, her voice a soothing whisper amidst the chaos. "I have a safe house we can hide in for now. It's a few blocks away, but it's our best chance." As we sprinted through the empty streets, the sounds of the world dimmed, replaced by the thundering echo of our collective heartbeats. I glanced at our mismatched band of survivors, weariness painted across their features, yet resolve glimmering in their eyes. Moments felt like hours as we dashed towards the park. The moon hung low, casting a silvery glow illuminating our path. Moving closer to the sanctuary of shelter felt like unraveling a tightly wound coil, but the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on all of us. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Maria led us to a small, dilapidated house nestled at the end of a hidden cul-de-sac. The front door creaked ominously as she ushered us inside, and we ducked in, holding our breath at the faint sound of footsteps receding in the distance. "Is it safe here?" Ruby whispered, uncertainty lacing her voice. "For now," Maria replied, her demeanor shifting as she gestured for us to follow her into a cluttered living space, barely illuminated by scattered candles. "But we need to act fast. Thomas won't give up easily." As the door clicked shut behind us, a palpable sense of dread settled over us. We were alive, yes, but danger still lurked in the shadows. In the stillness of that room, finally safe but surrounded by uncertainty, the reality of our intertwined fates settled heavily on my heart. "Tell us everything," I implored Maria, as we gathered around the flickering light of the candles. "What do you know about Thomas? About why he's targeting Ruby?" Maria shook her head, her eyes momentarily clouded with memories that bore scars too deep to gloss over. "There's so much you don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thomas's ambitions are tied to your family's, Ruby. Your lineage holds secrets he desperately wants to possess and control." Ruby's breath hitched as she grasped the meaning behind those words. "What secrets?" "Your family has a legacy that dates back generations, powers tied to this city, its history. Thomas has pursued this legacy relentlessly, silencing any who threatened to reveal the truth." "Powers?" Milo frowned, disbelief painting his features. "What are we talking about here? Supernatural abilities?" "No," Maria shook her head, her voice firm. "It's not that simple. It's information, knowledge, power in the financial system of the city. And for Thomas, control of that power means everything. He will do anything to erase anyone who stands in his way, anyone with ties to that lineage." The weight of her words hung heavy, a thread of reality weaving through our fear and suspicion. This fight wasn't merely for survival. It was a battle for the truth buried within Ruby's past, and it seemed our fates were intricately entwined. In that moment, as newfound fears wrapped around us like a shroud, I realized clarity was often found within the darkness. Perhaps we were standing on the cusp of an awakening, an opportunity to unravel the legacy that had been suffocated long enough beneath the weight of silence. Uncertainty continued to churn, but I sensed a shift as Ruby met my gaze. There was still the faint flicker of determination, the inner resolve surging back to life. "Then we'll expose him," she said firmly, her voice breaking through the tension that ensnared us. Together, we'll fight to reclaim our lives. I won't let Thomas control our story any longer. And there it was, an ember igniting a spark that would blaze into the unyielding fire of resistance. In that moment, surrounded by shadows slowly giving way to hope, an unspoken promise connected us all. Our journey wasn't just about survival. It was about seeking the truth, reclaiming lost legacies, and lighting the path forward against the looming darkness. With trembling determination, I whispered, "Let us reclaim our story." And together, against the thunderous chaos approaching, we stood resolute, ready to confront whatever awaited us, no longer victims, but powerful architects of our own fate, pawns transformed into players in a game we were determined to win. In that solemn promise, I understood, this was where our true battle began. Hope ignited, and for the first time, the shadows felt less daunting. We were no longer walking alone. We were walking towards our truth, towards a future crafted by our own hands. And with that promise, we unshackled ourselves from the chains of anguish and stepped forward into the unknown, unyielding in our defiance. Because underneath the weight of darkness, we would rise and reclaim our light. Together,